Welcome to the Fat Monk Podcast. Tales of meeting an unorthodox Taoist and his friends amongst the mountains and waters of China. Written by Xiaoyao Xingzhe and read by Nick Dent.
Chapter 6. Pouncing Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Ancestor Liu says in The Secret of the Golden Flower, the highest secrets of alchemy are three: the essential water of vitality, the fire of the spirit, and the earth of attention. The cave's mouth opened onto a broad, flat space. Just visible were the gently waving tops of the pines that grew at the foot of the cliff below us. Green forests stretched for miles, but an errant sparkle betrayed a river's run in the distance. The warm breeze of late afternoon sighed through the branches, carrying a delicate scent that contrasted sharply with the tone of what I was hearing. "Be merciless," the fat monk said. "Cut them once. Then jam them up against the wall, then cut again. They might try to run, but there's no way out. Then you kill them." Gave an evil, sadistic laugh. "Use a single stone to kill them dead, each and every one." He slapped the piece down on the go-board with a solid thwack, completely demolishing my position on the right. It was infuriating. He gave me his innocent look. "Say, is your concentration up to par?" he asked, as we swept the Weiqi pieces into black and white groups, then stored them away. "You've been looking a bit distracted recently. Anyway, I wanted to show you a restorative method, and by chance, it's from that book you've been asking about, the Zhongli Ji. The passing of the Tao from Zhong to Liu, the classic work detailing the conversation in question and answer form between the Taoist patriarchs Zhongli and Liu Dongbin. It was a basic outline of internal alchemy. I had it in my bag in an English translation that meant precisely nothing to me. "That's funny, it's pretty clear," the Taoist said when I confessed this to him. "Maybe you just need some orientation to get a grip on the terms. Or maybe the translation is not so good. We'll see." He stood up, twisting his back this way and that. I'm a bit stiff myself after our game." He led the way into the cave, stretching his hands toward the ceiling some 20 feet above. Deeper in the cave, it was cooler, but still quite bright, and there were several wooden benches and a table to sit at. From one of the deep pockets in his robe, he pulled out a rolled manuscript, opened, and spread it out on the table, and pressed it flat with a couple of stones. "This is the section on dragon and tiger," he said, gesturing at the woodblock print characters running from top to bottom on the page. "It's relatively straightforward, but to understand it, you need to keep the Taiji diagram and all its associations pictured in your head." He glanced at me with a worried look and then said, maybe I better draw it for you." He swept a flat space in the dust on the floor, then used a stick to draw a circle, putting a reverse S shape in the middle, then drew rough characters around it. Wood on the left, fire at the top, metal on the right, and water at the bottom. "There you go," he said. "Yang on the left, yin on the right. Now, let's look at what the manuscript says." Liu says, "Dragon is the image of liver. Tiger is the spirit of lungs. Here, from the midst of heart fire, fluids are generated, and these fluids are true water. The midst of true water is murky, unfathomable. Hidden here is the true dragon. Dragon is not in the liver. It emerges from the trigram Li. Why is this? Also, from the midst of dragon water is generated true qi, and this true qi is true fire. In the midst of true fire, faintly, is hidden the true tiger. The tiger is not in the lungs, but is generated from the trigram Quan. Why? The fat monk used the stick to trace the circle clockwise, starting at the bottom, and said, "Kidneys are the depths of yin, still and quiet." Then, when that watery quietness has reached an extreme of stillness, a point of energy emerges, yang energy that grows up and out until it manifests. This is like the rising of the sun. The rising of the sun begins at midnight, even though we only see it at the dawning. He pointed at the character for wood on the left. This is where that yang energy, hidden but gradually growing, finally manifests, just like the sun lifting over the horizon. Yang increases until it reaches the peak. He pointed at the top of the circle. Then it begins its decline, and yin increases. I was impatient. This was utterly basic stuff. What was he laboring it for? I couldn't help but interrupt. Yes, I know, and the dragon is a symbol of that growing yang energy rising up, while tiger is a symbol of that increasing yin energy moving downward. Dragon rules the sky of yang, tiger rules the earth of yin. So what? The Taoist was unperturbed. If it were that simple, then why does it say dragon emerges from the trigram Li, which is here at the top, the place of fire, instead of from the trigram Quan, which is water, at the bottom? He looked at me, eyebrows raised. I was silent. I literally hadn't seen those words, hadn't taken them in. And why does it say fluids are generated from the midst of heart fire? Do you know about that? He was inexorable. My mind raced. My Chinese medicine theory was not bad, thanks to discussions with friends. But heart fluids? Wasn't that blood? No, wait, sweat. But that didn't seem to fit. Definitely must look it up when I get back, I thought. All this took only a second, but the fat monk gave me no more time. The point is that there are levels of subtlety here. The unconscious physical level is described by Chinese medicine theory, while Taoist theory goes beyond that, describing what happens when you add deliberate conscious intent into the mix. And there are several degrees of subtlety in that as well. What applies to all levels is the obvious and well-known principle that yang activity ascends until it can do so no longer, then transforms into yin and descends again into stillness, only to be born again. He tapped the stick on the ground. What we see here is that each stage of any level of this cycle contains within it the living tendency of its opposite. For example, if we are talking at the level of internal alchemy, the descending tiger should retain the flexible, open awareness of the dragon, while the ascending dragon should have the solid determination of the tiger. It really is quite marvelous how viewing it from this angle opens up a rather dead theory into an organic, complex, living thing. It's like looking carefully at a flower and seeing how its patterns repeat more and more subtly. Taken momentarily aback by his unusually poetic turn of phrase, I struggled to understand. But these words here, xin sheng ye, heart producing fluids. How does the heart fire generate fluids? Doesn't make sense. How do you get fluids from fire? He laughed. You're thinking narrowly. Nothing exists in isolation, and we are talking here about an organic whole, a whole system, if you like. The fluids that are generated are not created out of nothing, but are transformed from potential into manifestation. He pointed at the circle again. Dragon carries kidney water upwards, hidden within true yang qi. When this qi reaches the heart, this water is steamed out within the lungs and manifests as lung fluids descending with tiger. Zhongli Chen describes it somewhere. He shuffled through the pages, then said, here it is. He spread out the sheet and pointed. Liver qi guides kidney qi from below upward to reach the heart. Heart is fire. When the two qi meet and mix, steaming takes place in the lungs and lung fluid descends from the heart. This is why it is said that heart generates fluids. Like I said, There are different levels at which this can be understood, the medical, the qigong, and the alchemical. But within each one, there are degrees of accuracy and usefulness. But what I wanted to show you was the alchemical aspect, the transformative aspect. That would be most useful for you. The Taoist stood up and, still carrying his stick, walked to the mouth of the cave. I followed, and as I reached him, he gestured up over the forest and into the evening sky. At a basic level, he said, yin is the body, like the earth here, and yang is the mind, the sky. The mind can be trapped within the body, never leaving it and its concerns, or it can look up and soar into the heavens. What we don't often realize is that this very soaring can attract beneficial influences back to us, celestial influences that assist us to break the hold the body has on our attention and free us to be much more creative than we otherwise might be. This is manifesting the Tao within the everyday world. As the sky darkened outside, I noticed the rising moon peeking over the treetops. A cool evening breeze had sprung up. The Taoist circled his arm from horizon to horizon. So, dragon is the soaring mind of Tao, that when it reaches a peak, descends again to earth, carrying with it the dew of celestial influence. While tiger is the human mind, enlightened to some extent by the Tao mind, and carrying that positive influence into action. Bit by bit, the mind of Tao and the human mind merge, what is called making real knowledge conscious and making conscious knowledge real. He pointed upward. Normally, the subtle mind of Tao is obscured by our everyday concerns, just like those stars were obscured by the daylight. What we are trying to do is to bring that subtle mind of Tao into awareness so that it can help inform and guide our actions, like the stars can guide our path on our journey. To do this, we need to pay some attention inwardly and let those everyday concerns dissipate. This is letting quietness accumulate until stillness reaches a peak. And that is when the mind of Tao can manifest. He took his stick and, bending over, drew a trigram in the dust at the mouth of the cave. I could just see it by the light of the rising moon. This is the trigram Zhen, thunder, he said. See how there is one yang line under two yin lines, one solid line under two broken lines? He pointed with the stick. This is a graphic illustration of what happens. The mind of Tao, the yang line, appears within after attaining profound stillness. And the profound stillness would be shown by three yin lines. Yes, you're starting to get it. He straightened up and stretched again. This is where I can tell you the other aspect of Xin Xiang Ye, heart-generating fluids. Don't forget that Xin also refers to mind as well as heart. When you get everything set up right, you are relaxed yet focused and present. The mind has settled down, and you turn the light around to quietly observe the source of thoughts. You suddenly find that your mouth is filled with sweet saliva, what we call gan lu, sweet dew. These are the fluids generated by the mind. Xin, he gave me a look. But don't get fixated on saliva, for God's sake. It's just a minor indication that you are basically doing most things right so far. It is not important by itself. Say, are you hungry? Or is it just me? After a leisurely but light dinner seated at the wooden table, we strolled out to the mouth of the cave again and stood looking at the moon. It had long since cleared the trees and dominated the evening sky, now a darkly luminescent royal blue. The Taoist turned and faced the mouth of the cave. Anyway, I brought you here to witness something incredible. What? I asked. Impossible to describe, he said brusquely. Follow me. We entered the dark rear of the cave, the fat monk disappearing ahead of me as I felt my cautious way ahead, step by step. Just then a flicker appeared in the darkness ahead, and in its light I saw the Taoist holding something above a flame. A torch. It took light and illuminated a heavy wooden door, effectively hidden back in a crevice. The hinges creaked and a large iron key disappeared into a pocket as he pushed through, then turned and beckoned me to enter. The air was different in the narrow passageway, a mild breeze tinged with sulfur. The sound of trickling water echoed there, but I had no time to look around before the torch receded into the distance. I hurried, the stone floor and walls just visible. After several twists and turns, the light up ahead descended jerkily to the level of my feet, then disappeared. A reflected glow showed steps spiraling down to the right. One turn, a landing, and I caught up to him. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Just imagine you are entering a deep space within yourself," he replied cryptically, then gestured for me to be silent. Another passage, and again a set of spiraling steps. 3 or 4 turns later, we emerged onto a level space just as the torch spluttered and died away to an ember. There was light for only about 2 feet in either direction. I could not see the walls, but it felt like a tiny chamber. "Never mind," said the Taoist. "I can find my way back." "You can find your way back," I said. "What about me?" "You are staying here." He shushed me as I started to protest, then held the torch low and swept it around to search the area. There was a flat rock somewhere, Yes, here. He grabbed my hand and guided me several steps to a low seat. The top had what felt like a woven reed mat on it as a cushion. He pushed down on my shoulders until I sat. "This is a place very conducive to deep meditation." "But what should I do?" "Do nothing. Sit and allow emptiness to manifest." "How long for?" He did not answer, just patted my shoulder and turned back toward the passageway. The torch was useless now, only a spark left, yet his movements were confident. I heard his footfalls fading on the spiral steps. Then there was silence. Silence and blackness. Lao Tzu, chapter 16, says, "Reaching the extreme of emptiness, keeping quiet steadily as myriad beings act in concert, I thereby watch the return." A faint, almost imperceptible breeze played across my face in the tiny chamber. This, then, could not be a self-enclosed space. There had to be some opening to the greater world. "Do nothing," he had said. Luckily, I had experienced doing nothing. The Taoist explained that even our own concept of self was doing. We constantly have to imagine ourselves into existence. If you let go of that effort, even your sense of self would disappear, he had said. This is doing nothing. But it can be dangerous if you have not developed a stable personality. This is why we insist on normal integration into society as a prerequisite for Taoist study. You have to both be and not be, as it were. All this ran through my mind, but as the darkness seemed to thicken around me, my thoughts quietened. My breathing deepened and slowed. Time became a liquid thing, not so much flowing as lapping gently around me until it enveloped me in stillness. After an eternity of blackness, there was a queer lessening of the obscurity below, little tendrils of luminescence that seemed to glow, now a bit brighter, now fading, almost as if they were waving. Weirdly, that undulation seemed to be part of me, and could be felt as well as seen. It moved without time and without ending. Gradually, I saw that the light throughout the whole chamber was growing. It slowly spread around me until it revealed that the space was not tiny and enclosed as I had imagined, but a huge cavern. From my small seat of rock, the roof arched high above, and below me was a pool of water, within which stalagmites reached upward. To either side, caverns and vaults opened out, and I could see vaults beyond vaults disappear into the subterranean distance. Suddenly, and without warning, the brightness increased to an intensity that could only come from the sun itself. In that instant, the light exploded, reflected from each surface in the cavern as if from 1,000,000 tiny mirrors. Each of the mirrors reflected each of the others, and within that infinitude of reflections, there was no room for me. I was blinded into non-existence. "Micah," the fat monk said, scratching himself. We had just shared some leftover spring onion cakes for a meager breakfast, and he was completely unimpressed with my tales of wonder. "It's a completely natural phenomenon, nothing spooky or supernatural at all. But it exploded, light everywhere." "That whole cave is one big sheet of mica," he said, "shattered into millions of tiny reflecting facets. Only 2 times each year does the sun line up perfectly with the aperture leading inside to cause that effect." I was still excited. "Well, what about the waving sprouts, the tendrils of light that came up first? Some bioluminescent microlife must have come alive at a certain point during the night. And the variations in the luminosity made them seem to wave like sprouts in a stream." He gave me a look of mock severity. "You need to keep your imagination in check. It makes you prone to jump to erroneous conclusions." But then he grinned. "But I understand how you feel. The first time I sat on that mat, it blew me away." And try as I might, I couldn't better that description.
Thank you for listening to the Fat Monk podcast, produced by Ben Thomas with music by Flora Carbo. Please like and subscribe and go to the show notes for links and further content. If you'd like to become a material supporter of the podcast, click on the coffee button at the bottom of the show notes.